record. There we go. All right, looks like we're good to go. And how do you pronounce your last name exactly?
Bourbonniere.
Bourbonniere. Easy. Okay, great.
Yeah.
All right. Mitch Bourbonniere, welcome to the Because and Effect podcast. It's great to have you here.
I'm very happy to be here, Nolan. Thank you.
So, as educator, community activist, one of the founding members of the original Bear Clan Patrol, I was looking you up, a day or two ago in anticipation of talking to you, and it is incredible the amount of accolades, the amount of volunteerism that you do. It's honestly too much to even name. You got the Order of Manitoba last year, which is very cool. The Joe Zukin Citizen Activist Award as well. So my first question, I want to go back to 2006. You got the award for the Manitoba Schizophrenia Society for the Hero of Mental Health Award.
Yeah.
And that struck me because 2006, how we approached mental health and being a hero of mental health in 2006 was a lot different than how we approached mental health in 2020 and 2021. So I want you to just talk a little bit about your approach to mental health in 2006, if you can go back that 15 years ago and remember what it was like, versus sort of how the approach to mental health has changed in the last 15 years.
Yeah, for sure. And I agree with you, Nolan. I do believe stigmatization and just generally talking about mental health has really improved. It's by far not gone far enough. Like, we obviously need to continue to evolve and develop our notion of mental health and mental illness. But certainly in the last 15 years, there's been lots of progress. So back in '06, well, you asked me what my perception approach has been with mental health overall. I come by it honestly. So as a little boy, I had a psychiatrist, I had a psychologist, I had a social worker, I was on medication. So I was a consumer of mental health services as a little guy. Then in my early career, starting at 22 years old in 1985, 86, I started working at a psychiatric hospital for youth called the Manitoba Adolescent Treatment Center, and worked there for 18 years, learning mostly from the kids and the families what mental health and mental illness was all about. And then lo and behold, my first son was actually, sorry,
Oh, I
yeah,
lost you for a second. Oh, there you go.
yeah, I'm back.
Okay.
My firstborn son actually was diagnosed with schizophrenia about 15 years ago, right around that time. So between being a little boy consumer of mental health, working in a psychiatric hospital for kids for 18 years, and then being a father and a family member to someone with schizophrenia, it's always been super near and dear to my heart, mental health and mental illness.
Wow. Incredible. I mean, yeah, looking at your accolades and just sort of the plethora of things that you focus your efforts on is very impressive. Where does the passion come from? Have you always been like, I gotta help, I gotta help people out? Has that always been a thing that was sort of top of mind for you?
Yeah, kind of. I'm still quite legitimately ADHD, so I have tons of energy, even into my old age here, and I'm always needing to be moving and doing things and being involved in things and many things all at the same time. So I embrace that. And basically, what happened to me is, as a little boy, I had so much trouble with behavior and learning disabilities and psychiatry that I didn't feel very good about myself. And we're going to get into this later, I'm sure. But what probably saved me was volunteerism, because
Mhm.
I started at a young age. I had the opportunity to volunteer at Rosberg House in 1979, and
Beautiful.
it was my medicine, Nolan, and it has been ever since.
A consistent thing that I talk to with people through this podcast, it's usually people in the charitable sector, and everybody says what they gain from volunteering is way more than what they put in. When it comes to being able to give back to the community, it enriches your life so much. So maybe just talk, did your parents sort of encourage volunteering, or how did you get started at such a young age, and why?
Well, I'm glad you reminded me about my parents, because actually they were warriors out there. And back then in the '60s and '70s, it was more church related. So my dad, like, he did so much for our parish community, but also for newcomers. I would, I'd be 7, 8 years old. I'd be accompanying my dad in the old jalopy truck, picking up furniture and household goods for new Canadians coming into our parish. So I come by it quite honestly. My mom's a teacher. And one of those teachers that went the extra mile with students. She was on the phone with her students in the evenings and weekends, trying to help them and tutor them. So definitely come from that kind of background.
Awesome. Yeah, I can only imagine like the plight of the teacher in 2020 and 2021 when you have to be over Zoom and all this crazy. How are you handling this new world that we've been in? How has it affected your work, and how has it changed sort of how you're able to connect with the community?
Well, I like to say that on March 20th, 2020, when everything got shut down, for about 20 minutes, I was absolutely unemployed, without income, with no prospects for about 20 minutes.
Hmm.
So what happened? My whole world changed because I was teaching university. I was flying up north to Fox Lake to spend time with those folks. I was doing something called action therapy, which is really hands-on in the community, volunteerism. I was doing Mama Bear. Like everything I was involved in got canceled, got shut down. And there was a few organizations that approached me that needed help because of the pandemic.
Mm.
So, several doors closed, a couple doors open. And I've actually, I don't really want to say this, but I've really enjoyed my pandemic time, like, in a way. I understand people have died and suffered, and the loneliness and the mental health, and I've had a little bit of that too. But I've also been able to shape shift my career, and it's really dovetailed well with my age going into the latter bit of my career here. So what happened is Mount Carmel Clinic picked me up. Edmund Partridge School picked me up. The North End Community Resort, NERC, picked me up, and it was all about serving people in terms of basic needs. So I was like, it was kind of a retirement job. Like I went from some pretty high level intervention stuff right on the street to actually like just like delivering medication,
Mm.
delivering traditional medicine, delivering food, getting people clothes, getting people to appointments. Like I became like an uncle to the community. Like it's been great. I've actually really, really enjoyed it. And I thank Mount Carmel and NERC for that.
And it's just back to the basics almost, right? I think
Yeah,
what
totally.
what I've definitely been grappling with, or not necessarily struggling with, because I have luckily a lot of safety nets in place when it comes to the basics and stuff. But it really is making me reflect on what I've taken for granted over the years. Even just going out for beers with the boys, or things that I never really understood how valuable they were to my mental health until it was taken away. And when you think about just, being able to call a friend, or being able to go for coffee with a friend, and things like this getting taken away. So just returning to the basics of human connection and human need. How have you seen the community evolve and sort of just pivot and figure out a way to deliver these basic human connection moments and necessities in this crazy time? Like, obviously you've been able to kind of connect with people in certain ways, but how is the community responding when it's such a tumultuous and crazy time out there, just to get the basics out to people?
Well, I would just want to remind everybody that there's folks that are really suffering right now, like with the isolation and, the spaces they can't go into anymore and the connections that have been severed. And I'm really worried. I'm really worried for a lot of folks. I have seen some kind of neat little things though. One is my messaging and my telephone is off the hook with people who want skates right now. Like, and of course you can't buy anything right now. So all my families, like, it's one thing to make sure that they've got food and all their basic needs met. But right now I'm actually just super busy running around getting ice skates for people that would normally never do that. So I think one thing that's been really helpful is the weather. Like,
Mm.
can you imagine
Mhm.
like the pandemic, the shutdown, and -40 for the last 2 months? Like, it's
Oof.
mind-boggling.
Yeah.
So with the weather, there's been a lot of people going outside, walking the trails and bicycling and ice skating at the river trail. So I'm pretty happy about that.
Absolutely. Yeah, there is a lot of opportunity for connection and for good and for reconnecting with nature and all those things. One thing I'm pretty concerned about is elder care in these times. Can you talk a little bit about your relation to, taking care of our elders, and how do you think our general population has been when it comes to focusing on our elders and what they need and staying connected with them? And another part of it is allowing our elders to take care of us in a way. I think a lot of times the North American approach is we have to take care of our elders, but a lot of times we can learn a lot and take a lot, we can allow them to take care of us as well. Maybe just speak to your approach in elder care when it comes to COVID and just in general as well.
Yeah, and great question. And I think COVID has also shone a light on our relationship with our elders. And I think on the negative side, I think we've seen how awful some of our elders have been treated. They've been lost and forgotten, and physically and emotionally not taken care of. So I think that's been exposed. So that's a good thing. But my work personally has shifted. So one of my organizations that I work with is OPK. OPK is partly funded by the United Way. So it was that time of year where we needed to, look at our stats and everything. And the average age of who I work with out there has really increased. So I'm still working with young people and with families and whatnot, but there's been a whole other demographic that I've been connected to during the pandemic, which has been awesome. And I spent most of the weeks leading up to Christmas, delivering hampers to just elders. And some of the elders I met were incredible. They have incredible histories, incredible stories. They're resilient. Like some of the folks I met with were, into their 70s, 80s, 90s, and, socially distant and with masks on, we could share beautiful moments on the doorstep. And so I think I have a new appreciation for our elders and what they can teach us, and I just love them. Just love
For
our
sure.
elders. Yeah.
Beautiful. Well, it's got to be so hard when the news is just all you hear is another, 70 plus person. This disease is disproportionately devastating for our elder population. So what, like, are you getting a general sense that there's a higher anxiety? Obviously, but I mean, how are people generally handling it when you're going door to door and connecting with them? Is how are they keeping their spirits up, if you don't mind me asking?
Well, I think just little visits like that mean the world to them. It's like good
Mhm.
medicine. I've had people just light up, and as they light up, they light me up. And what you said at the beginning of this podcast, that you get more out of what you're giving, and I've certainly received more than what I've been giving during this pandemic, especially with the elders. That's been like a newfound gift for me. But I think they're hanging in there, and just it doesn't take much. I make phone calls, I send messages. I do the door curbside wave, and deliver what I need to deliver at the door, and they're super appreciative, and they know that we're still thinking of them.
Yeah, just reach out and stay connected. Hey, obviously,
Exactly.
some are a lot more comfortable with technology and stuff. I've done a few Zoom calls with friends and family, and it's pretty interesting to see, people get it like, "Hello, am I on? Can you hear me?" And it's pretty adorable as well.
That's for
I
sure.
I would love to talk about the men's healing group that you started out of North Point Douglas. What was the impetus for that? How did it get started? And what was the inspiration to start a men's group talking about some pretty heavy stuff?
Yeah, about 5 years ago, I was approached by the North Point Douglas Women's Center, which is a safe space for women. And I was really, really honored and quite frankly astounded that they would want my input as a male. We have a history of men not treating women properly and actually abusively. So, and there's a need for these women centers, and for them to approach me and say, Mitch, we want to start a men's group. We
Mm,
need your help, to develop this and lead this. Our men need to heal. So we have daughters, we have wives, we have mothers who want their men, to do well. And so 5 years ago, in the women's center, they open up their sacred space to us. Imagine the trust, imagine the forgiveness that takes. And it was not lost on the men. The men who came 30 strong, week after week after week for the last 5 years, up until the pandemic, it was not lost on them, like the power of being invited into their space, and they had meals prepared for us.
Oh,
Like
wow.
it was almost too much. But we sat in circle, we smudged, we sang, we cried, we laughed, we talked about being better men, we talked about our relationships with our own dads,
Mm.
we talked about being dads, we talked about being partners, we talked about every subject under the sun. But we also wanted to do more. As men, we decided to also go into the community and do something called lateral empathy, lateral kindness, where folks in the same boat, instead of turning on one another, actually help and support one another. One thing I'm really proud about with that men's group is that it spawned several other men's groups.
Mm.
And pretty much before the shutdown, there was somewhere for a man to go every night of the week. So we had a couple of nights at the Thunderbird House, Mount Carmel Clinic, the Chiefs, the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs had a men's night.
Wow.
It was happening all over the place, and it's still happening. And we all kind of we're kind of a community of helpers now. And there's a men's movement. There's a synergy right now, and it got a little derailed with COVID, but
Mhm.
it's not going anywhere.
Well, it's kind of hard. I mean, you spoke about you explained the context of things fairly well, because there are a lot of traumatic experiences that men sort of impose upon women, but there's also a lot of traumatic experiences that are imposed upon men. There's drug abuse, addiction, gangs, all of these sort of things that you're trying, domestic violence, sexual exploitation. Um, all of these things can be linked with trauma, right? And
Yeah.
so let's talk a little bit about trauma and how you've probably been dealing with trauma for decades now, and helping people through their trauma. So I think, as if there's anyone that could be considered an expert in it, you're probably high on the list. So just maybe generally speak about how you've approached um, other human beings and community members who have gone through trauma or are currently going through trauma, and how have you helped them through those experiences?
For sure. I believe that nothing can happen without relationship.
Mm.
How does relationship happen? Relationship has to happen where the narrative has changed for people, because people have been hurt, they've been wounded, they've been they don't trust, right? And so to get through that woundedness, to get through that mistrust, to make yourself valuable to another human being that is hurting and needs something, but yet is pushing away, takes tremendous amount of relationship building, safety, and trust. And basically being trauma informed, understanding not to take things personally when people turn on you, because that'll
Mm.
happen when you're
Mhm.
trying to help folks and be supportive to folks that have been traumatized. uh, like I do a lot of trauma informed training, and I actually tell teachers and social workers and police officers, actually, don't take anything personally. Take it as a actually take it as a compliment if someone's letting it all hang out with you, because that means they feel that you're big enough and strong enough to handle their hurt and their pain and their anger, and it's what they need at the time, right? The other thing I wanted to touch on, Nolan, just before, is when we were talking about the men's group. A really cool thing that's happened is a breakthrough in what we call toxic masculinity. So men have been taught not to cry. Men have been taught not to reach out. Men have been taught not to say "I love you." Well, we do all of those things. And if you took a visual of our actual men's group, we look rough. Like, I'd be probably the most dainty looking guy in that group. And we're all big, rough guys that at this point tell each other, "Love you, bro. Love you, brother." You know, and we're taking that out into our families and into the community. We're showing love, we're expressing love, we're crying, and we're asking for, and that's also part of that trauma, healing from trauma as well, is changing the narrative.
Well, because the narrative has been programmed for generations. I mean, my upbringing was, you're fine, get up, you're fine,
Yeah.
I mean, I had great, wonderful parents, but played a lot of sports growing up, was on a lot
Yeah.
of teams, and there is that toxic masculinity element of things where you're almost conditioned that vulnerability and love and showing, emotion is a weakness. And in
Right.
reality, it's actually a strength. So how do you approach deprogramming first? Or, like there's decades upon decades of this generational programming in our brains now. How do you approach the first deprogramming aspect of that toxic masculinity to then open up for the emotional sort of outbursts?
I believe role modeling and mentorship for
Mm,
sure. And and if I'm leading the group, it starts with me. And I probably shed a tear every week with the guys, about something that's going on in my life. And I've had the fellows tell me, I would not have opened up if you hadn't opened up, and you
mm,
showed me that is possible. I want that. Right.
yeah,
And then it's just not me that's leading now. We've created other leaders, and so it's just expanding, and there's a
beautiful.
lot of there's a lot of good uncles out there.
Yeah, lead by example. You have to do that for sure, right? I
Yeah.
mean, I'm 35 years old now, and it's only been the last couple of years that I realized, oh, crying's actually good. Like it actually feels good to cry. Before I would avoid crying at all costs, and I would panic if I was like, oh, I'm going to start crying. I can't let anyone see this. I can't, I
Yeah.
don't want this to be an outward expression. And I've recently met some wonderful people who have helped guide me through, actually, it's good to have a cry. It feels good.
Yeah.
And that deprogramming has taken a long time to kind of, because I still get panicked, and I just have that training of like, don't cry, you're fine. You can handle
Yeah.
this. You can do anything. You don't need anyone's help. And all these things that I've been taught, like either like consciously or subconsciously, and it's just weird to kind of now learn, oh, it actually feels pretty good like this. So I mean, you mentioned the group of rough and tumble looking guys, but what is it like for you when you see someone who is maybe arms crossed, not really wanting to participate, eyes down, that eventually, I'm sure, sort of comes out of their shell and now becomes a leader? Or tell me, how do you feel when you see these victories?
Victory is the perfect word, Nolan, and I've seen it over and over and over again. And actually, I internally smile when I see the crossed arms and the head down, because
Mm.
I know what's going to come. And I have so much faith, because I've seen it over and over and over again, the victories. So yeah, for sure.
You seem like a very optimistic person. I'm trying my best to be optimistic in these times when it comes to um, discussing social ills with friends and family members. And how do you deal with the negative talk and the negative sort of opinions of, they should just figure it out themselves and pull themselves up by their bootstraps, and that mentality? How do you respond to that, and how do you feel when you hear it?
I hear it a lot, and I don't tend to get in a power struggle with folks. It's not my job to change anybody's mind, but it is my job to speak up and offer alternative thoughts about what they're thinking, in a gentle but powerful way. And I don't think you can change people's minds without touching them emotionally.
Hmm.
And so a lot of the stories I share are heart wrenching. And just sharing a few heart wrenching stories, it almost forces people to say, "Whoa, yeah, okay, well, I didn't really consider that."
Mm,
Right?
hmm.
So, yeah, being originally a good Catholic, I use a little bit of guilt to change people's perceptions on others.
It's a powerful force. I can
Yeah.
definitely agree with that. I mean, you're obviously subjecting yourself to a lot of traumatic stories, and people are sharing their traumas with you. How are you staying mentally well, and what do you do to kind of make sure that you're not getting too burdened by any sort of negativity?
I think having a just a warm, safe home fire to go
Mm,
back to, like to be loved and protected in. I have that. I have a nest. I have a place where no one can touch me. I'm safe there.
beautiful.
Surrounded by family, and that's what I try to promote for others, right? And yeah, there's things that I do just for myself, whether it's getting the motorbike out in the spring and summer. Actually, a lot of the things that I do for entertainment or self care kind of got taken away with pandemic.
Mm,
I love going to comedy. I love going to Bombers and Jet and Gold games, and I really miss the Folk Fest this year. I'm involved in a Sundance ceremony every summer that we didn't have this year. So there was a bunch of stuff that I usually do for self-care that just wasn't there. So like others, I've had to reconnect with nature. I've had to reconnect with people. Like I've reached out to so many people, and so many people have reached out to me during these last 10 months, that's been pretty cool too.
It's that connection and community. That's another thing I think a lot of people take for granted. You know, you're on a hockey team, you're on a volleyball team, you know, you have all these opportunities for community connection, and when that gets taken away, you now realize, oh wow, this is something that I really took for granted. It's really integral and important to my mental health and well-being, and now I have to figure out ways to adapt and still get that experience, but maybe through, you know, a Zoom chat or whatever it may be. So how are you using technology more, or how are you trying to stay connected with community?
Yes. I'm not a big social media guy. The only social media that I have is Instagram. It's Mitch underscore B underscore official, if anyone wants to follow me. Um, but I'm not on Facebook. There's, you know, like anything, there's a positive and a shadow side to everything. And for me, it would be too much energy to be on Facebook. But I do have the Messenger app on my iPhone, and I've joined so many different chat groups during these 10 months, and they're all different. They're all like different groups of people. So, you know, I've got my sports buddies, you know, and I got my social justice warriors, and I've got all my different chat groups, and pretty much every night I'm responding and being funny and you know, joining in on the conversation with everybody.
It's all about sharing the memes, you know. 2020 and
Yeah,
2021 are all about sharing the memes with your crews, because
love the memes.
that's the only thing keeping us sane. Something
Oh my
else.
God, some of the memes that came out of the horrible situation that happened in the States last week, like it's like if you're not laughing, you're crying,
Yeah,
right? So,
exactly.
like just I'm sorry to do this, but like just to poke fun at some of the folks that did what they did last week was actually healing for me and some of my folks in some of my chat groups
Yeah, it's
with the
so,
memes.
well, it's
Yeah,
so egregious and so beyond the pale that you have
yeah,
to mock it, because
right,
otherwise you'll go insane, like completely.
right.
Yeah,
So
for sure.
I've had a little healing that way this with technology over the pandemic.
When you see the divide, the cultural divide that's now bubbled to the surface, and now people are starting to really see the disparity between the haves and the have-nots, um, how do you think that this is all going to play out? Like, not necessarily in the States, but maybe just in our communities, where people are starting to realize, like, there's a two-tiered system of existence, and some people have access and some people don't. So how is this
To
all going to shake out?
not go insane, I must believe that good will triumph. I have to. Like otherwise, what's the use, right? And so I'm going to grind it out, and I'm going to try to, you know, lead by example. I'm going to try and be a role model. When I have a chance, I'll try to, you know, change some perceptions in other folks. I got a little bit excited at the start of the pandemic because I thought, okay, here it is, the great equalizer, right? Like we're all equal in the eyes of this virus. But as the pandemic has played out, it's actually been the opposite. We've seen that you know, the void between the haves and have-nots have become greater. There were single parents that literally could not shop for Christmas gifts this year. Never mind like poverty. They don't have a credit card. They don't have curbside. They don't have a vehicle to pick up at Walmart. They had like it really hit me this Christmas. I had a lot of really good donors that mustered up a ton of toys and Christmas gifts for us to distribute this Christmas. And I literally had mums and dads weeping with relief because poverty is one issue, but access is another issue. When you don't have a credit card, when you don't have a vehicle, and you can't, you know, you can't shop during the pandemic,
When you
right?
don't have Wi-Fi, when you don't have a,
Yeah.
you know, a smartphone, or like, there's so many things that even I take for granted, for sure, and I'm realizing, like,
Shopping online
yeah.
and curbside and all of that. Like opening up the thrift shops was unbelievably awesome.
Mhm.
Thank you, whoever thought that one out.
Very important, for sure. I want to drill down. You mentioned, sort of, when I asked about your own self-care routine, and you talked about you have a good fire burning at home. And I loved in your bio, it said that in multiple for multiple organizations and in multiple contexts, you were the firekeeper. You kept the fire. I want to ask you, what does it mean to keep a fire? And when it comes to that honor bestowed upon someone, how do you feel when you're asked to do that?
Well, in the Indigenous community, fire is a huge symbol of home and safety and survival, as is water, as is air, as is earth. But a home fire is so important in terms of the symbolism around safety. And at every gathering, at every important function, there's going to be at least a little fire burning somewhere, but someone has to look after that fire. And there's a teaching in looking after that fire. There's a responsibility. We talked about the internet and it being, a great tool, but also a great evil. And actually, fire and water teaches us that. Fire warms us, lights our room, cooks our meals, but fire can also destroy us. Water, nourishes us, bathes us. We travel on water. Water can take out a village, right? So it's just a reminder how nature can teach us the value of walking that fine line between light and shadow.
Very well said. Yeah, I love that teaching, and I think it's very important for people to kind of expand their horizons a little bit to different schools of thought, for sure. So at the end of our time together, we do a little segment called Just Because, where it's the same 7 questions. We talk about the causes you care about, why you care about them, and how that came to be. Are you okay to do that for us?
Yeah, and you are such a good conversationalist that we kind of covered what I thought my answers were going to be
Oh, really? Well,
already.
that's
But,
okay.
but,
That's okay.
but yeah, that's a good thing, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
But
We can dig
I
deeper.
will ad lib. Exactly. We'll drill down here. So
Sounds
fire
good.
away, Nolan.
Great. So question 1 is, what is the very first cause you even remember, even if you can go back to childhood, what's the first cause you ever remember giving a hoot about?
I would say domestic violence.
Oh,
Yeah, as
okay.
a little boy, just already starting to think about the role men and women play with each other and the safety of homes.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other one was just Indigenous youth. I got a chance in 1979 at 16 years old to volunteer at Rossbrook House, and it changed my life. I still have a relationship with Rossbrook, but
Cool.
that's what kind of set me off on my journey.
Yeah. Well, Phil Chiappetta was our last
Love Phil.
person on the podcast. So yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
Awesome. Question 2, if money and politics and logistics were no issue at all for you, you could just snap your fingers and something would happen in support of your current cause. What would that wish be, or what would that thing be?
Space. So we've
Mm.
got empty buildings in Winnipeg,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So if money is no object, the Masonic Temple that used to be Mother Tucker's right downtown. We've got people in bus shacks. Like I can look out. I'm downtown right now. I can look out. I'm looking out my window, and there are people sleeping in bus shacks. Thank goodness it's not a brutal winter so far, right? There are no spaces, and especially with the pandemic, uh, libraries are no longer accessible, restaurants no longer accessible, drop-in centers, shelter. People have nowhere to go. Our bus shelters are, and not just downtown, but across the city, are filled with folks that need space and need support and need uh, love and guidance, right? So we got all these empty buildings. Like on the news last night, there was an empty apartment block at the corner of Morley and Osborne. People want something done with it. It just sits empty year after year after year. We have space. Those buildings are heated, otherwise they'd fall apart. So they're heated. Why can't we use that? And then it helps with employment. Like we can employ and train a ton of people to right the ship.
I think and I hope that after this all shakes down and the pandemic we're through to the other side, that our relationship with space shifts, because we do not need to have thousands of offices and like all this space that we spend and rent and all these things that I go from here to there, go to the office, then go to here, and there's people that don't even have a bed, or
Right.
a roof
Literally.
above their house, and we have like 4 different places that I can work from. It's like, okay, we need to adjust our approach to how we use and think about space when people don't even have enough to shelter themselves. Yeah.
Beautifully said, Nolan.
Question 3, what's the biggest misunderstanding or stigma about your cause?
You alluded to it, the narrative people have that it's basically their fault where they find themselves, not understanding that generational woundedness, abuse, terror. Some of the stories I could share with people about what some of the folks I work with have gone through is torture and terrorism is what they've been through. Throw in, brain issues, throw in addiction, throw in mental illness, throw in trauma, throw in discouragement, throw in racism, and this is what we get. People don't choose to sleep in a bus shack. That is not a choice.
Yeah. And I love the metaphor of, when you line up for a race, usually everyone's at the same starting point. And when you start to think about the context of some people have to start 20 meters behind you, that just for the start of the race. And
Yeah.
if you think that everyone is coming from the same place and everyone can make it and this and that, I think we're starting to educate people a little bit more, but it's still there's a long way to go when it comes to people understanding that not everyone even has the same starting point in life, right?
Equity versus equality.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
thank you.
Thank you. No, this is great. Question 4, what's a time in your life where you had to pivot because plan A wasn't working out, so you had to switch over to plan B?
I mentioned already, March 20th, 2020. Like literally everything I was involved in got shut down. I sat there for 20 minutes and then the phone rang. And my wife Linda said, "You'll be fine."
Yeah. Well, for someone like you that's so willing and energetic and just like well, I was reading a story that you jumped into a river to save someone as well. Is that true?
That happened a few years back.
Like the world is always going to need people who just act before,
Oh, I
someone
act
needs
before
help.
I think.
Well,
That's for
no, that
sure.
yeah, but someone needs help, I'm
Instinct.
gonna help them,
Yeah,
that's the world needs more people like that.
thank you.
Question 5, what is the best advice that you've ever been given?
This is a meme from Anthony Hopkins. And uh, I've never had to involve myself in 12 step. Fortunately, I've not had to do that, but I have visited many, many, many meetings with people, and there's great messaging in the 12 step
Mhm,
movement.
mhm.
And Anthony Hopkins, the famous actor who did Silence of the Lambs, comes from that background. He is a long, long time 12 step person. He had a really nice quote that I try to follow, and it goes like this: uh, accept everything, accept it, accept that it's happening, accept everything, expect nothing, right? And it just frees you up. Someone also, as an exercise, once told me, try not defending yourself for 24 hours. It is so liberating.
Yeah, I can oh man, yeah, no kidding. I really like that advice as well though. Accept
Yeah.
everything. I think that's a good approach to and it's sort of counterintuitive, but when you have anxiety about something, normally the approach is to deny it and just push it away and I'll think about that later and I don't want to deal with that and blah blah blah. But accepting that in and just, okay, why am I anxious right now? Let's
Right.
explore this. Let's like
Yeah.
experience it. Let's live in the anxiety a little bit. I think that it seems counterintuitive, but for me personally at least, it's really helped me work through some things that I might have been apprehensive to actually delve into. And now I'm actually, okay, why am I anxious about that? Like accept it. Let's live in this
Yeah.
for a while. Yeah.
And that's mindfulness, right? Live in the
Mm,
moment. Get through this. It's not one day at a time. It's one moment at a time.
very well said. I think that might
Yeah.
be the first question or the first answer to that question that was a meme. So congratulations, 50 plus episodes and you're the first meme. I love it. So question 6 is also about advice, but what advice would you give your 10-year-old self if you could talk to him right now?
I love this question, and definitely I would have given myself this advice at 10 years old because I have regrets. So the advice is, don't talk yourself out of any opportunity that you might not ever get again.
Mm,
Because I look back, and I'll give you an example, Nolan. So my dad died at 64, 18 years ago, and I had a chance. I'll probably get emotional here, but I had a chance. My brother set up a vacation for the three of us just to go away, and I was working and things were tight, and another time, and of course, my dad died shortly after that, and I'll forever regret that I just didn't take that moment,
For
and
sure.
because you can talk yourself out of it, like financially, blah blah. I could have taken that trip, and I'd still be sitting here talking to you, but I would have had that memory and I would have had that experience.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
yeah, don't talk yourself out of stuff that you can never get back.
Yeah, I think it
That'd be
comes.
my advice.
Yeah, that's great. It's fantastic advice, and I think that's such a common theme with people's like. There's a million and one reasons not to do something, right?
Right.
And we're such a culture of like, I can do it later, or I'll do it another time, or I don't need to, or whatever the case is. But yeah,
Right.
yeah. Thanks for sharing that story. That's beautiful. The last question is usually the hardest one. What do you want to be remembered for?
This isn't hard.
Oh, really? Good.
Yeah. Okay. Three things. Hard work. Like, work hard. I love it. I'm so proud to work hard. That's prayer for me.
Mm,
As I work hard, that is prayer. Like, I love it. I love being a beast. I love just working
grinding. Yeah,
hard.
yeah.
Yeah, grinding. Compassion, and thirdly, balance.
Mm.
Right? Like, I often just find myself right down the middle on most issues. I see both sides. I understand both sides, but there's got to be some sort of answer down the middle. I don't. I extremism doesn't work with me.
That's something I think about a lot nowadays because you're seeing, you talk about social media, you don't see the balanced perspective. That's not what gets play in that medium, right? It's
Yeah.
usually the fringes that and the loudest people that sort of get the most um, play for whatever reason. But how do you stay sane in a world where you just hear the fringes arguing when you're sort of sitting and being like you both want the same things, you just want to be happy, healthy, protected, safe, keep your friends in
Yeah.
good standing, but the perspectives are just so
When
extreme.
I'm asked, yeah, when I'm asked for my input, I'll bring perspective to it all, and I think that's what Indigenous elders are known for, is like just wisdom. Just, guys, here is what it really is, and they just bring it all together, and I love that gift, and I see myself heading into that direction where, when called upon, I will bring perspective. I will bring balance to the people.
Well, you're one of the wisest people I've ever spoken with. Thank you for sharing your wisdom. Thank you for sharing your time with us. Is there anything else that you'd like to tell our audience or at the Winnipeg Foundation about? What are you working on? Where can people find out more information?
Well, I want to thank the Winnipeg Foundation. I want to thank the board members and the worker bees,
Mhm.
yourself, all the folks that make it all work. Because not everybody can be on the front lines, and that's okay, right? It's just not possible. I'm a frontline guy, boots to the street. I'm out there. I'm interacting. I'm sometimes I feel like Robin Hood. Like, so many people give to me so that I could give to others. I end up kind of being a hero with the folks out there. But meanwhile, there's so many people backing me in terms of donations of water, of clothing, of food. It never ends, and I love it. And the Winnipeg Foundation is of that, bent of just, hey, what do you need? The answer is yes. What's the question, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I love it. So
So
thank
Mitch,
you, and I want to hang out with you, man. You're
let's do
awesome.
it.
You're a great conversationalist, and I could riff off you all day, man.
Well, thank you very much. I the same. Like you just have a good energy, and the world needs more good energy in it for sure. We should
Thank you,
grab a
sir.
coffee. Can grab a coffee or go for a walk at the Forks. Or if you got skates, I'll go for a skate.
I'm working on it.
Okay, great. So Mitch Bourbonniere.com and Mitch _B _
Official.
official on Instagram.
Yeah, that was my
Awesome.
daughter's idea.
Well, it's good. It's good to just share. Honestly, how I've been approaching social media is that I use it to create sorry, not real, but I use it to connect or at least set up opportunities for connection in quote unquote real life. So I think
Right.
that's a good way to use it, right? Like if you're connecting
Yeah.
with people with the end game of, hey, let's go for coffee or let's, go for a skate or
I'm
whatever.
glad we have it.
Yeah, exactly, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
Mitch,
I
thank
can't.
you for talking. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say quickly. I couldn't imagine how we would have done actually without it through the pandemic, right? But anyway,
100%.
Yeah.
Thank
Anyway,
you.
thank you.
It was great to talk to you. Be well, take care, and we'll talk soon.
Right on, brother.
Cheers.